My friends, let me begin today with a confession that might surprise you. For the first 37 years of my life, I believed I was free. I looked at others struggling with obvious addictions, alcohol, drugs, gambling, and I felt grateful that I wasn't burdened by such chains. I ate moderately, rarely drank, never smoked. Was, by all accounts, a disciplined person. Then I entered the monastery, and within my first week of true silence, I discovered something that shattered this illusion completely. I realized that I, like every human being who has ever lived, was deeply addicted to something far more subtle, yet far more powerful than any substance could ever be. I was addicted to the constant movement of my own mind. You see, addiction isn't just about what we put into our bodies. It's about what we cannot stop feeding to our minds. It's about the patterns we repeat compulsively, often without even recognizing we're doing so. And the most universal addiction of all is our addiction to mental stimulation, to the endless stream of thoughts, judgments, plans, and reactions that we mistake for living. During my first meditation retreat, when I was instructed to sit in silence for hours, I experienced what I can only describe as withdrawal symptoms. My mind raced frantically, searching for something to grasp onto, something to analyze or solve or worry about. It was like watching a person desperately searching for their next fix, and that person was me. This revelation led me to understand something profound about human nature. We are all addicted to the illusion of control that our thinking mind provides. We're addicted to the story we tell ourselves about who we are, what we need, and what will make us happy. We're addicted to the future we're always planning, and the past we're constantly reviewing. Let me share with you what I learned about the anatomy of addiction during my years of study and practice. Every addiction, whether to substances, behaviors, or mental patterns, follows the same basic cycle. First, there's a trigger, something that creates discomfort or unease within us. Then comes the craving, the urgent need to escape or change that feeling. Next is the behavior, the action we take to satisfy the craving. Finally, there's temporary relief, followed inevitably by the return of discomfort, often stronger than before. This cycle applies as much to checking your phone compulsively as it does to reaching for a drink. It governs our need for constant entertainment, our compulsion to shop when we feel empty, our addiction to being right in arguments, or our dependence on others' approval to feel worthy. But here is what I discovered in the quiet depths of meditation that no psychology textbook had ever taught me. The trigger is never really external. The true trigger is always our resistance to what is present in this moment. We become uncomfortable with stillness, with uncertainty, with the natural ebb and flow of our emotions, and we reach for something, anything, to change our internal state. I remember a conversation with my teacher during my second year at the monastery. I was struggling deeply with what I thought was a caffeine addiction. I craved tea constantly throughout the day. I came to him seeking advice on how to quit drinking tea, expecting him to give me strategies for willpower or gradual reduction. Instead, he asked me a question that changed everything. When you reach for tea, what are you really reaching for? I initially gave surface answers: energy, warmth, taste. But he kept asking, gently, persistently. Finally, I realized I was reaching for a moment of pause, a brief respite from the intensity of my inner experience. I was using tea as a ritual to give myself permission to stop and breathe. Once I understood this, something beautiful happened. I began giving myself permission to pause without needing tea as an excuse. I discovered that what I thought was a caffeine addiction was actually an addiction to avoiding the present moment. The tea was just the vehicle. This insight opened my eyes to see addiction everywhere, but not in a way that created despair, rather with tremendous compassion. I began to see that the businessman addicted to checking emails wasn't really addicted to work. He was addicted to feeling important and needed. The person scrolling social media endlessly wasn't addicted to the content. They were addicted to the dopamine hit of validation and connection. The mother who couldn't stop worrying about her children wasn't addicted to anxiety. She was addicted to the illusion that her worry somehow protected them. The perfectionist working 16-hour days wasn't addicted to achievement. They were addicted to avoiding the fear of not being enough. Understanding this completely changed my approach to healing. Instead of fighting the behavior, I learned to meet the underlying need with awareness and compassion. Instead of judging the craving, I began to investigate what it was truly asking for. The ancient texts speak of something called tanha, often translated as thirst or craving, but the deeper meaning is more subtle. Tanha is the constant reaching of the mind, the inability to rest in what is present without wanting to change it, fix it, or escape from it. This reaching mind is what keeps us trapped in cycles of addiction. We reach for substances, experiences, achievements, relationships, always seeking something outside ourselves to complete us, to make us feel whole. But here is the profound truth I learned through years of practice. What we really seeking is the peace that comes from no longer needing to reach. The path to freedom isn't about developing stronger willpower or finding better distractions. It's about learning to be present with our experience without immediately needing to change it. It is about developing what I call comfortable discomfort, the ability to feel anxiety without needing to escape it, to feel sadness without needing to fix it, to feel restless without needing to fill the space with activity. I want to share with you a simple practice that has helped countless people break free from their addictive patterns. It's called the RAIN technique, and it's based on ancient Buddhist wisdom adapted for our modern struggles. When you notice yourself reaching for your addiction, whether it's your phone, food, shopping, or any compulsive behavior, pause and apply RAIN. First, recognition. Simply notice what's happening without judgment. I'm reaching for my phone again. I'm craving sugar. I'm about to lose myself in worry. This recognition alone breaks the unconscious pattern. Second, acceptance. Instead of fighting the craving or judging yourself for having it, accept it as a natural part of human experience. It makes sense that I'm feeling this way. This craving is here, and it's okay. Third, investigation. With genuine curiosity, explore what's underneath the craving. What emotion are you trying to avoid? What need are you trying to meet? Often, you'll discover loneliness beneath the need to check social media, or fear beneath the compulsion to control. Finally, non-attachment. This is the most profound step. Instead of automatically acting on the craving, create space around it. Watch it arise, peak, and naturally fade away like clouds passing through an empty sky. I practiced this technique for months before I began to see its true power. Initially, I still acted on many of my cravings, but I did so consciously rather than compulsively. This awareness alone began to weaken the hold these patterns had over me. Gradually, I noticed something remarkable. The cravings themselves began to change. They became less urgent, less demanding. Sometimes they would arise and dissolve without my needing to do anything at all. I was learning to surf the waves of my own experience rather than being pulled under by them. But perhaps the most profound discovery was this. Beneath every craving, every addiction, every compulsive pattern, there was a deep intelligence trying to care for me. My phone addiction was my psyche's attempt to help me feel connected. My perfectionism was trying to help me feel secure. My people-pleasing was trying to help me feel loved. When I began relating to my addictive patterns as misguided attempts at self-care rather than personal failures, everything shifted. Instead of fighting against myself, I began working with myself. Instead of suppressing my needs, I began meeting them in healthier ways. If I craved connection, I would call a friend or spend time in nature rather than scrolling through social media. If I craved security, I would practice meditation or engage in meaningful work rather than trying to control everything around me. If I craved validation, I would practice self-compassion rather than seeking approval from others. This approach requires patience, something our instant gratification culture hasn't taught us well. Healing from addiction isn't about achieving a perfect state where we never experience cravings. Healing from addiction isn't about achieving a perfect state where we never experience cravings. It's about developing a new relationship with our cravings, one based on wisdom rather than reactivity. Let me tell you about David, someone who came to our meditation center several years ago. He had struggled with alcohol addiction for over a decade. He'd been through multiple rehabilitation programs, had years of sobriety, followed by devastating relapses. When he arrived, he was convinced he was fundamentally broken. David's breakthrough came not when he learned to resist alcohol, but when he learned to be present with the emotions he was using alcohol to avoid. Through meditation and mindful awareness, he discovered that his drinking was his way of escaping from a deep sense of inadequacy that had haunted him since childhood. Instead of trying to convince himself he was adequate, which felt false and created more internal conflict, David learned to be present with his feelings of inadequacy without judgment. He discovered that these feelings, when met with awareness and compassion, were simply temporary experiences passing through consciousness. The most beautiful part of David's journey was watching him realize that he didn't need to fix himself or become someone different. He just needed to stop running from who he already was. His addiction to alcohol was really an addiction to avoiding his own humanity. Today, David has been sober for over 3 years, but more importantly, he's developed a friendship with his own inner experience. He no longer drinks not because he's strong enough to resist alcohol, but because he no longer needs to escape from himself. This brings me to perhaps the most important point I want to share with you today. True freedom from addiction doesn't come from developing a stronger ego or more willpower. It comes from recognizing that the self we think needs fixing or controlling doesn't actually exist in the way we imagine it does. When we sit in deep meditation, we begin to see that thoughts arise and pass away on their own. Emotions come and go like weather patterns. Even our sense of being a separate self fluctuates and changes. What we discover is an underlying awareness that remains constant, peaceful, accepting, and naturally free from the need to grasp or push away. This awareness is what some traditions call our true nature. It's not addicted to anything because it lacks nothing. It doesn't need to be entertained because it finds richness in simplicity. It doesn't need to be validated because it knows its own inherent worth. The irony is that the more we try to control our addictions from the level of the thinking mind, the stronger they often become. But when we learn to rest in this deeper awareness, addictive patterns begin to dissolve naturally, like salt dissolving in water. I want to leave you with a practice that has been central to my own journey and that I share with everyone who asks about overcoming addiction. Each morning, before you begin your day, take 5 minutes to sit quietly and ask yourself this question: what do I really need today? Not what you want, not what you think you should need, but what you really need. Often, the answer will be something simple: rest, connection, beauty, purpose, or just the permission to be imperfect. Then, throughout your day, when you notice yourself reaching for addictive behaviors, pause and ask, is this meeting my real need, or am I reaching for a substitute? Sometimes you'll still choose the substitute, and that's okay. But gradually, you'll find yourself making choices that truly nourish you rather than just temporarily distract you. My friends, I want you to understand that your struggles with addiction, whatever form they take, do and make you weak or broken. They make you human. Every person who has ever lived has wrestled with the tendency to seek happiness outside themselves, to try to escape discomfort, to look for completion in external things. The path to freedom isn't about becoming someone different. It's about coming home to who you've always been, beneath the patterns of reaching and grasping. It's about discovering the peace that was never actually lost, only temporarily obscured by the clouds of craving. Your journey toward freedom begins not with fighting against your addictions, but with turning toward them with curiosity and compassion. They are not your enemies. They are your teachers, showing you exactly where your heart is longing to be free. Take this wisdom gently, practice it patiently, and trust that every moment of awareness is a step toward the liberation that is your birthright. Until we meet again in the silence of your own awakening heart, may you find peace in this very moment, just as it is.